Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. I, Douglas Ducote, an American patriot by the grace of God, do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from enemies foreign and especially domestic. Say it with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, Patriots, and welcome to another edition of the Douglas Ducote Show. You had many places you could be tonight, but you chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. I hope that you tuned in and you watched the Sean Hannity interview with former President Donald Trump. And feel free to let me know in the comment section what you thought of the show and what you thought of the questions and answers between Sean and Trump. So let's get right into tonight's show. It's going to be a little shorter than normal because of the hour delay that we did. So right into it. I've warned right here on this show many times that we are headed for another 9/11 type attack. It's not a matter of if, it's when. It will happen, sadly. It will happen because this administration is not taking the security of our southern border seriously. If that wasn't enough, the Department of Justice under this administration is not taking the words and tweets of terrorist sympathizers such as Rashid Tlaib and Alihan Omar. So here we go with more proof of what I've been saying all along. FBI Director Christopher Wray testified earlier today that the terror threat facing the United States has reached an unprecedented level since the October 7th attack on Israel. Senator Lindsey Graham asked Wray to describe the current threat matrix facing the United States during today's Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. What I would say is that is unique about the environment that we're in right now in my career is that while there may have been times over the years where individual threats could have been higher here or there than we're at right now, I've never seen a time where all the threats or so many of the threats are all elevated at the exact same time, the FBI director replied. So, blinking red light analogy about 9/11, all the lights were blinking red before 9/11, apparently, Graham continued. Obviously, all of us missed it. Would you say there's multiple blinking red lights out there? He asked. And Wray answered, I see blinking red lights everywhere in America. He later told Graham that since the October 7th massacre in Israel, when Hamas terrorists brutally murdered at least 1,200 Israelis, a rogue gallery of foreign terrorists has called for attacks against the United States. The threat level has gone a whole other level since October 7th, Wray emphasized. The director's comments on Tuesday echoed what he said back in October when he warned Senate lawmakers the actions of Hamas and its allies will serve as an inspiration, the likes of which we haven't seen since ISIS launched its so-called caliphate several years ago. Attorney General Merrick Garland said in October that reported threats against Jewish, Muslim, and Arab communities in the United States spiked in the days and weeks after the start of the Israel-Hamas war. The number of attacks on U.S. military bases overseas by Iran backed proxy groups rose in November as well, with the Pentagon confirming at least 74 attacks on U.S. troops stationed in the Middle East since October 17th. The 74 attacks on U.S. troops have taken place in Iraq and Syria and began October 17th by Iraqi militant groups backed by Iran. The attacks are reportedly linked to the U.S. support for Israel and its retaliation against the Palestine militant groups Hamas following the attack on October 7th. The attacks do not include ballistic missiles that are being shot in the direction of U.S. military vessels, while commanding officers on those ships have orders to shoot them down. At home, the FBI and Las Vegas police this week were able to stop a lone wolf terror plot by a teenager who pledged support for ISIS. Last Friday, a 16-year-old suspect was arrested, and federal agents found components to build an explosive device and terrorist propaganda. The arrest was made after the suspect made special media posts announcing his plan for lone wolf operations in Las Vegas against the enemies of Allah. Because he's a minor, the Department of Justice will not release his name. And that's just another example of this administration not taking this serious. Because a terrorist is a terrorist regardless of their age. And terrorists have no rights in America, in my book. The Biden administration has warned Congress that Ukraine funding will run out by the end of the year and that they need to approve an additional $61 billion to the already $111 billion we have already sent Ukraine. House Speaker Mike Johnson responded and told Biden there would be no additional funding for Ukraine without first making extensive reforms to the U.S. immigration system. Speaker Johnson issued the ultimatum in a letter today to the White House. Biden Democrats had pushed for months to provide additional funding for Ukrainian war effort, aimed dwindling Republican support for the issue. With immigration being an even more divisive issue for Congress, Johnson's declaration is a major blow to the prospect of further aid to Ukraine. Johnson's letter said Ukraine aid is dependent upon enhancement of transformative change to our nation's border and security laws. The White House said there's no magical pot of funding available to meet this moment. We are out of money and nearly out of time. Cutting off the flow to U.S. weapons and equipment will kneecap Ukraine on the battlefield, not only putting at risk the gains Ukrainians have made, but increasing the likelihood of Russian military victories. Already, our package of security assistance has become smaller and the deliveries of aid have become more limited. If our assistance stops, it will cause significant issues for Ukraine. The U.S. has already contributed well over $100 billion to Ukraine's war effort since Russia invaded the country in February of 2022. Republicans have increasingly questioned why that money isn't being spent right here in America. Well, Speaker Johnson, I can answer that question for you. And for all the Republicans that are wondering as well. This administration could give two shits about America and our security. Johnson first announced plans to pair Ukrainian funding with immigration funding into the same bill back in the beginning of November. The American people feel very strongly about this, as do I, he said. We have things that we can and should do around the world, but we have to take care of our own house first, Johnson said. As long as the border is wide open, we're opening ourselves up for great threats. And again, it's just a matter of principle. If we're going to take care of a border in Ukraine, we need to take care of America's as well. And I think there's bipartisan support for that idea. Well, newsflash, Speaker Johnson, there isn't bipartisan support. The Democrats don't give a damn. The Democrats have no concern about what's happening on our southern border. They don't care about the terrorists our border patrol has already captured. They don't care about the terrorists that have managed to get away. They don't care about the millions of pounds of drugs flowing across the border or the cartels sex trafficking women and children. That being said, if we do stop funding to Ukraine, Russia will win and take over that country and then move to the next country, because their goal is to take over every country in Europe that they possibly can. So what it's worth to you, Joe Biden, securing our borders or getting nothing for your pet project in Ukraine? If leaving our southern borders unsecure wasn't enough, 17 governors are calling on federal leaders, including President Biden, to prevent foreign adversaries like China from buying U.S. land. Republican Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders is leading a letter with 16 of her fellow GOP governors. It was sent to Biden Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and congressional leaders in both chambers to tackle the growing issue of China buying American land, including farmland. Numerous governors and state legislators have taken action to protect our citizens from the imminent national security threat of the Chinese Communist Party. But national security demands a national response from national leaders, they continued. If you haven't already noticed this, Joe Biden is in love with China, just like he is with Ukraine. The responsibility is now with you, the lead of our states, and prevent CCP a messing of American lands. The governor noted that it's no secret the communist regime in China is acquiring lots of real estate property throughout the United States. And that very recently, a subsidiary of the Chinese-controlled company bought 270 acres of land in Green Charter Township, Michigan, not far from Camp Darling National Guard facility. Unfortunately, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States declined to block or even review this plainly alarming transaction, the governors wrote. And I've reported on this before. They are buying land, especially around our military bases that are for sale. The Republican state executive said that states have stepped into the breach to protect this country's most vulnerable resources, the American people, while the Biden administration has failed to address the threat at hand. The leaders also noted that a bipartisan group of 11 states enacted foreign ownership laws, and that Arkansas became the first state in the country to act under such a law by ordering cigarette seeds of agriculture companies owned by the Chinese National Chemical Corporation, or ChemChina, to devise 160 acres of land in the Diamond State. For too long, we have allowed dangerous adversary governments to infiltrate our country. Our states will tolerate such allowances no longer. The Biden administration must reckon with the fact that such entities are plain threats to our national security, our farmers, and our citizens. This is especially true since the CCP enacted a law in 2017 requiring Chinese citizens abroad to collaborate with Chinese security officials on intelligence work, no questions asked. The governor said they are heartened to see some in Congress advance legislation which would mitigate this threat and encourage congressional action to codify or stance into federal law. Republicans also urged the Biden administration to use all available tools to prevent the continued acquisition of American land by adversary foreign governments until Congress can pass legislation addressing the growing issue. This is not about where anyone is from. Our states welcome Chinese Americans and anyone else who has escaped foreign oppression for American freedom. This is about where your loyalties lie. We simply cannot trust those who pledge alliance to a hostile foreign power. The letter was sent to Biden and Yellen, as well as House Speaker Mike Johnson, House Minority Leader Hankam Jeffries, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, and Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. The governor's letter comes as Americans' attitude towards China has soured. The number of Americans who view China as an enemy of the U.S. is growing. A majority support a buildup of American military personnel to deter the potential invasion of Taiwan, the annual Reagan National Defense Survey has found. And of course, we have the Pentagon telling us almost weekly now that the threat from China is real. According to the survey, 77% of Americans view China as the enemy, while just 15% view the nation as an ally. That number is a drastic change from 2018, when the survey found that 38% of Americans viewed China as an ally and 55% as an enemy. A majority of Americans, 51%, also view China as the greatest threat facing the nation, up from 43% last year and 21% in 2018. Meanwhile, the number of those viewing Russia as the greatest threat is actually falling, with just 24% viewing the nation as such, down from 31% last year following the invasion of Ukraine. To allow any country, especially one that we are not on good terms with, to come to America and buy up our land is beyond stupid. And this administration is stuck on stupid for not doing something to stop it. This isn't new. We've talked about that for the last several years, actually, on the Douglas Ducote Show, as has other news outlets. It's a serious problem. Why is China buying up all this land in America, especially around our military installations? If it's for sale, they're paying cash immediately and buying it up. A doctor treating freed Hamas hostages reveals abuse that's just off the charts. She said, we have to rewrite the textbooks. Dr. Rihanna Ethan says Israeli hostages experience extreme, severe psychological and physical abuse at the hands of Hamas. I can tell you that on behalf of all the medical and psychological teams treating those who return, the mental states we encountered have no presence in medical literature. We feel we have to rewrite the textbooks on post-trauma. Dr. Rihanna Ethan told Sunday night in America television news program, Ethan revealed the Tel Aviv Medical Center is actively treating more than 15 former hostages and described their severe physical and mental abuse. Those held captive were subject to starvation, to beatings, and to sexual abuse. They were being held in inhumane sanitary conditions. Extremely severe psychological abuse was inflicted on them, including separation from family members, separation from siblings, separation of children from their mothers. They were held in solitary confinement and spent long days in total darkness until they developed severe hallucinations. Children were forced to watch brutal videos. They were under a constant threat by weapons and threats to harm them if they were ever released. They refer to the forced use of psychiatric drugs and other substances. Ethan also detailed cases where individuals, though appeared physically unharmed, were dealing with severe post-traumatic stress symptoms. some of the homecomers, they look happy. They look fine. They look physically fine. And we try to hold on to those optimistic signs. But still, even those who seem fine, we know that most of them are suffering from severe post-traumatic stress symptoms. They have painful traumatic memories, and they are entering into dissociative states where for a moment they feel as if they are still captive, and only later do they return to understand that they've actually been released. The weeks marks 2 months. This week marks 2 months since the Hamas terrorist attack on Israel, which left 1,200 dead and 250 held hostages, to include Americans. According to the Israeli Ministry of Health, 73 Israelis and 24 foreign citizens have been released by Hamas to date. Eaton urged the release of the remaining hostages as soon as possible, as they face a long road ahead of physical and mental rehabilitation. You know, evil doesn't care. Sadly, only decent human being societies have what we call the Geneva Convention. The rest of them, they don't care. They treat their hostages however they want. And I do believe that Rashid Tlaib and Alihan Omar should be actually forced to go over there and help and watch what these barbaric bastards have done to innocent humans, to include children. Senator Joni Ernst is demanding action from President Biden regarding border security after military families who booked rooms, hotel rooms, in Foxborough, Massachusetts, which is the site of the 124th installment of the Army-Navy game, are now receiving cancellation notices from the hotels because they're now being used to house illegal immigrants. It's clear these cancellations are due to your administration's decision to ship illegal immigrants across the country to sanctuary cities at taxpayers' expense, Ernest wrote in the letter. Now, due to your unattainable border crisis, which has allowed nearly 8 million illegal immigrants entry into our country, veterans and future service members and their families will be unable to attend this year's Army-Navy game. Massachusetts has a right to shelter law, which ensures migrants and homeless families have somewhere to live. It is flatly unacceptable for our veterans and family members to be displaced because your administration's failure to secure our southern border. Military families who have been trying to save money and plan to come to this trip, make this trip up there to Massachusetts for this Army-Navy game, should not have to compete with illegal immigrants for hotel room space. Mark Mansbeck, the owner of New Jersey-based Hillsdale Travel, has been servicing military members and their family for 20 years with hotel accommodations and more, especially when it comes to the Army-Navy game. Mansbeck, whose father was a first lieutenant in the 552nd Field Artillery Battalion attached to the 442nd Regiment Combat Team, has a website dedicated to providing military discounts to active duty personnel, retired military, cadets, and families for the game. Mansbeck previously told Fox News Digital that 60 combined rooms from various hotels were canceled, something that is never seen in his 2 decades of setting up military families for the game, which takes place this year on December 9th at Gillette Stadium. Not only is this game a recruitment mechanism, those of us who have served know it's truly an opportunity to showcase America's finest, the incredible young service members who have stepped forward to serve their country, the Corps of the Cadets, the Brigade of the Midshipmen, Ernest wrote. The Army-Navy game gives attendees, many of whom are veterans themselves, the opportunity to honor the next generation of our fighting men and women, as well as our nation. Mentorship assisted 40 to 50 military families who lost their accommodations, suggesting Boston as an alternative route despite the higher cost. Families initially chose Mentorship for his military discount, but are now seeking any available lodging for the game. Simply put, your administration's mismanagement at the border is causing American cities to be overrun and vital resources to be stretched beyond capacity. These problems will continue to persist until you finally take your obligation to secure our border seriously, Ernest wrote. In September, Massachusetts Governor Maura Hawley announced it would expand its legal services for illegal immigrants who are living in emergency shelters. Last month, she said she was troubled to learn that veterans and military families were seeing canceled hotel reservations due to migrants, and said Veteran Service Secretary John Centegos would be reached out to displaced veterans. Ernest's push for tighter border security comes as GOP lawmakers have been pledging and pleading with Democrats to agree to deal to add higher standards for asylum seekers at the southern border as part of Biden's $106 billion national security supplemental request for aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Thailand. However, Democrat lawmakers are not interested in policy change. According to a source familiar with the negotiations, Democrat lawmakers look at these millions of illegal immigrants they're allowing into the country to become voting citizens, to vote Democrat, because that's who allowed them to come here illegally. It's absolutely sickening what's happening to the United States of America under this current administration. And things need to change. And they need to change quickly. You had many places to be tonight. You chose to be here with me, and for that, I am forever grateful. Please, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. Also in the description of this video, when it goes up as a regular video after the show, and all my videos and all my shows is where you can follow me on social media, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. Please do so, and I'll return the favor. As always, please say a prayer for our men and women serving in the United States military, our veterans, our law enforcement officers, our first responders, and their families, our angel families, our blue and gold star families, and our country. May God bless the United States of America. May God bless each of you. I'll see you right back here on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Time, unless something else happens that is going to make me want to push the show back, because it's important that you see. Take care, everyone. God bless you. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. I'll see you soon.